Hello, everybody, and welcome back to CCIE Labs Uncensored with James Haddix. Today, we are going to continue our dive into spanning tree, and specifically today, we're going to go over spanning tree path selection. Also, you might have seen my just uploaded a new YouTube video, going over spanning tree manipulation on root priorities. So, and today we'll talk about path selection. We're going to talk about the path in which the determination for the root bridge is figured out. So we're going to go over two things. We're going to go over port cost and port priority. So port cost and port priority cover two of the different ways that we can kind of manipulate the election of the root bridge. The root port. So I'm going to do a little bit of a demonstration here on our lovely canvas. So we have, let's just say we have 4 switches. Okay. This is actually not the topology of our lab, but I wanted to kind of show everybody the objective of each of these are. So we'll say, for example, that switch 1 is our root bridge, and we've got a connection from 1 to 2, a connection from 1 to 3, connection from 2 to 3, from 2 to 4, from 3 to 4, from 2 to 3, and let's just go with 1 to 4. Now, let's say that the cost for this link right here is 1. Let's go with 4. It's a bad example. And you'll see why in a second. And then we'll say over here that the port cost for this link is 4. And then for this link between 1 and 4, let's say it's 10. Actually, no, let's not do 10. Let's do 19. You'll notice why. And then for here, we'll do 4. And for this path, we'll do 4. So the point that I want to get to you folks is not so much the links between 1 and 2 and 1 and 3, but look at the link between 1 and 4. So if you're really good at memorizing the different metrics of STP cost, a gigabit link is set to an STP cost of 4, and a 100 meg link is set to a cost of 19. So even though switch 4 has a direct connection to switch 1, it is not going to use that connection as a root port. Instead, it's going to end up using either switch 2 or switch 3, and that is going to be dependent upon the port priority. We'll get into that a little bit. We'll get into that a little bit later. But essentially, as far as port cost, it's not going to go over this link right here, because obviously, if it takes over switch 2 or switch 4, between switch 2 and switch 3, it's going to go one of these paths. We also forgot to put the link for switch 2 and switch 3, so we'll just say, for example, this might be, let's say it's a 10 meg link. So for a 10 meg link, it is 100. So sorry you guys can't see the numbers very well, but that's essentially how port cost is. That's a quick glance at it. So again, kind of just a quick summary of what I just told you folks. For a gig interface, the cost is going to be 4. For a 100 megabit interface, it will be 19. And then for, let's just say, a 10 meg, you'll typically see about 100. And these are defaults, remember. I think also for a 10 gig link, it's 2. So now these are sort of important just to remember, just as you're building a topology. All of these values can be manipulated manually, and we'll actually go through and do that. So that's the port cost configuration about it. So let's go ahead and get into our lab here. let's just go ahead and get into all of our different switches here. So right now we're going to look at let's show spanning tree for VLAN 1. Helps if I do the show part of it. And you'll notice here that this bridge is the root. So sorry about that on my phone, a couple of text messages. So let's show spanning tree for VLAN 1. And what we should see here, I forgot about this. Ignore the link part. So let me just get across here to what I was going to show you folks. Oh yes. So again, we're using a virtual instance for all of our switching, and the gig 0/0 interface is actually not used in this lab, so I'm just going to do a shutdown across all of our switches for that. So this is the first time I'm using this in our labs. Hopefully going forward I'll use this more. This is Super Putty. It's a derivative of the regular Putty interface, except you're able to have multiple tabs for telnetting or SSH. It's very similar to a secure CRT, so it's just the free version of it. So we want to do show spanning tree. And what we should see here is that switch 2 has set the giglink 1/1 as the root. Here it's 0/1 on switch 3. And here it's 0/3 on the root, or for 0/3. So what we're noticing here, and that's because all of the 2, 3, and 4 switch are all directly connected. So I'll remind you folks of what our topology looks like. I'll bring up the switch layout here. So this is what the layout typically looks like. So all these links are actually connected right now. So essentially they're all kind of taking a direct path. So what I'm actually going to do here is I'm actually going to disable one of the links between, let's say, between 2 and 4, or 2 and 1, excuse me. So right now, I'm sorry for a second, let me just catch across here to switch 2. I'm varying off of the actual lab notations just to kind of show you guys this a little bit quicker. So between switch 1 and switch 2, we've got giglink 1/1 and 1/2. And currently, gig 1/1 is set as the root, and gig /1/2 is the alternate root. So, for example, what if we want 1/2 to be the root, and we want 1/1 to be the alternate, but we want it to be like the immediate backup? Well, what we can do here on switch 2 is we can configure the port cost. So if we go into our config here, we'll do an int gi 1/1. We can do a spanning tree cost. Now, the higher the number, the higher the cost, which means that it's going to put that further down the preference list. So because we want gig 1 to be a backup, we'll go ahead and set it to, let's say, 2. Then for the other interface, let's say we want to set the cost to 1. So now spanning tree should catch up here in a second. And now you'll see that gig 1/2 is now the root port. So again, that's how you can manipulate the cost, and then we can actually prove or just show you how the cost works. So let's go ahead and shut down the gig 1/2. Let's do a shut, and then we should see gig 1/1 come up as the root port. So we should do a show spanning tree. You'll notice 1/1 does come up as the root. So we've shown pretty easily how we can manipulate the path based on the cost for a port. So the other way to manipulate a spanning tree is by port priority. So a lot of people get these two mixed up. So it's pretty. Here's how I help people memorize it. Port cost is outbound or upstream. So essentially, the port, if you're trying to manipulate spanning tree from traffic going up, you'd want to look at the port cost. If you want to manipulate spanning tree based upon downward traffic, so essentially you might want to take a look at your root bridge and maybe change some of the port priorities there, or even further down, you would look at this is inbound or downstream. So with port priority, essentially, and you'll look at it right here, essentially what these are all doing is they are all communicating to a downstream switch. So we'll go back to our canvas here. We'll do a new port, and I'll kind of show you guys what this means. So we've got, let's do switch 1, switch 2, switch 3, and let's do just a couple more just for giggles. So, and we've got switch 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now, for let's say our root bridge is 1, and we've got 2 connections here from 2 to 3. So really, we're not going to be too concerned about port priority around this area. But let's say from switch 2 to 4 that there are 2 different ports. And we want to specifically say we want to use this port right here. Let me just circle this. We want to use this port instead of this port. Now there might be a couple reasons why we might want to configure this. Typically the reason why you want to manipulate port priority is typically sometimes load balancing. For example, if the port's on an ASIC that has a lot of traffic, or just predictability of spanning tree is really the big thing. So let's say, for example, that this port is, and if you guys have seen my writing skills with a paintbrush, they haven't been very good. So let's say we've got gig 1/1 here, and down here we've got gig 1/2. What you will notice here on the priority is that the default for the priority is 128, but you see this dot number right here? That is the port number. So whatever is the highest port number, that is what's going to get priority. So if we go back to our canvas here, you'll guess that the priority for this would be, let's say 128. Well, let me select it, will it? Will be 128.1. So let's do this real quick. So we'll say the priority will be 128.1. And then we'll say it'll actually probably end up being .6 or something, because you can. It typically starts from zero from. Starts from .1 being the first interface, which is 0/0, and then counts up. So to be technically correct, and then for gig 1/2, it would be 128.2. So based upon that, that means that our blue. I'll do. See if I can. Here, nope. So we'll just say, for example, that our blue interface right here, this one right here, is going to be the selection from switch 4 to be the root port right here. So this will be our root port. Notice that the priority here has it doesn't have any effect on the local switch here in number 2. This doesn't change anything when it comes to the root election between 2 and 1. This only affects the downstream between 2 and 4. That's important to remember, like I said. Port cost is outbound upstream. Port priority is inbound downstream. So let's go ahead and let's make a couple of changes here. So let's get back to, actually let's do switch 3 and 1. So just to check our status here, just want to make sure we're all connected on everything. So G1 is disabled. All right. So between switch 1 and switch 3, I believe the interfaces are, let's see here for a second. You guys can see my YouTube video went up, so let's go to the live visualization. I think it's 0, 1, but it could be wrong. So let's zoom in here. And it is 0, 1 and 0, 2. So what we want to do is we want to set, so right now between switch 1 and switch 3, a quick thing we also could have checked is that the root connected to switch 1 is gig 0, 1. So let's say that we want to make gig 0/2 the root. So in order to do that part, we need to go over to switch 1 and we have to change the priority here. So to do that, we would go to config T and then we're going to change the priority on gig 0/2. So we'll do intgi 0/2 and then we'll do spanning tree, and then you have to specify the VLANs that this priority is going to actually apply to, so you can actually apply different priorities across the VLANs. But we'll do all of the ones included here. And we'll do priority. And I think we can do, if I can spell it right, 32. And, oh, nope, sorry. I did that completely wrong. So spanning tree, oh, you gotta actually type in the whole thing, port priority. And we'll do 32. So now if we show spanning tree VLAN 1, we should see here that the priority is set to 32.3. The .3 isn't really going to take into effect because the priority is different. But you'll notice here that nothing's changed on the root bridge, obviously because there is no root on the root bridge, or there's no root port. But now on switch 3, we should see a change here. So if we go to spanning tree, so if we go to this, you'll notice now that gig 0/2 is set as the root. And gig /0/1 is set as the alternate. So if we want to make 0/1 the backup, then we would simply just go back into config T and we would do on, this is on switch 1, remember, is intgi 0/1. And we will do spanning tree VLAN 1 through 4094 port priority. Spell it out, remember, and we'll do 64. So let's show spanning tree, and we should see the port priority set. And you'll just notice a change there. So then once we, actually it's not really a good example since they're both directly connected. So even if we didn't change priority, it would still go back to 0/1. But that is essentially a couple of the ways that we can manipulate spanning tree is through port priority. So again, port cost is outbound/upstream. Port priority is inbound/downstream. So increments of 32 and the dot following, so it would be XX of 32 and then dot the port number. So, and then of course, in case of priority tie, port number takes precedence. I cannot spell today. It's Friday. So those are essentially a couple of the ways that we can do some manipulation of spanning tree. Again, these are two very important things to kind of think about when you're doing a production environment, because you want spanning tree to be as predictable as possible. And these are some of the ways that you can increase that predictability. So in our next lab, we're going to go over spanning tree timing configuration. So one thing you probably haven't heard me say yet is BPDU, which you're going to start hearing that a lot more. That is the Bridge Protocol Data Unit, which is essentially just a packet that is sent across the different switches for certain things. And you'll kind of notice here that when we see the status of like forwarding or learning, those are called spanning tree switch port states. And there are 5 of them: blocking, listening, learning, forwarding, and disabled. So we'll get into that a little bit more in the next lab, but hopefully you guys enjoyed this, and we'll see you next time.